Hey there everybody, welcome to another episode of Bert's Bike, and today we are reviewing my 2004 Harley Davidson Road King Classic. Let's get into it. So what am I thinking? Why did I buy this Road King? Well, I really wanted to buy this Road King because I wanted to start touring up with my daughter. She's getting really into wanting to be a passenger and also riding, and so I figured this would be great for her. But let's look at this bike and just admire its beauty. I mean, it is just a wonderful looking machine, and for a 2004, I think it arguably looks better than anything Harley currently makes. Even just looking at it, it has this incredible weight and stoutness to the bike. It's so awesome. I'll go over some things on the bike that aren't stock. Obviously the Road King comes with a lot of things, but the things that aren't stock, starting from the top down, you got these mirrors. These are, I think, drag specialties. And then you have these kind of like, I guess, wide, swept back, I guess, tall boy bars, I guess is what they call them. What else is not stock? The foot pedals here, the brake pedal, floorboards, passenger pegs, all this stuff is not stock. The Mustang 2-up touring seat, and I'm not sure if the backrest came stock with the Road King. I don't think it did. So that's a nice option for it. So one thing I think is awesome about the Road King is that it comes factory, at least I think they did in 04, with the crash protection. And on a bike like this, it's really nice to have, because if the bike were to tip over, it not only saves it from getting damaged, but it also makes it easier to pick up because it doesn't fall all the way flat, I don't think. This bike is about 21 years old, and it has never been dropped. So I was actually looking at a Heritage Classic, and the number one thing that kind of like made me go with the Road King is it has this big, awesome nacelle in front of it, and this headlight configuration. Oh, another thing that's not stock too is the smoke turn signals front and back. But yeah, this nacelle is just, I think, makes the Road King. Woo! I mean, just look at that. It looks amazing. Let's fire this up. Got your Reinhardt True Dual exhaust on there. Sounds amazing. So this bike also has the SNS 510 cams, but a lot of people say it adds not only an increase in power and performance, but it adds kind of a thump to the bike. And this bike just sounds phenomenal. Let's just do a sound check. Woo! Wow, it sounds awesome. All right, let's hop on and talk about it a little more. All right, so right away riding up the bike, you definitely feel the weight of it. It is a heavy beast, stock. It is about 750 pounds. And you feel every bit of it when you're on this bike, especially at slow speed. When I first got on this bike, one of the things that took some getting used to were these wide and low tall boy bars. Now, it's an interesting thing because when I first got on the Road King, my first impressions were like, man, this is a big, heavy bike and hard to steer, hard to maneuver. But you know what's funny is once I got used to the weight, about like an hour in, I kind of changed my tune on this bike. So when you're moving, the weight doesn't go away totally, it doesn't disappear, but it gives you this feeling of plantedness when you're just cruising around. And it's interesting because, you know, my first impressions on this were big, boaty bike, hard to steer, especially with these wide bars. But you get so much leverage on these bars that the bike ends up being actually pretty darn nimble. Yeah, so after a couple of days of riding, it was like not such a big heavy bike anymore. You just get used to it. I really got used to these tall boy bars. I was thinking about, you know, raising them up a little bit and all that kind of stuff, but I really like this sort of wide and low stance you get with the bike. And man, it's just is a vibe. I mean, this is amazing. Yeah, seating ergonomics, I think it's perfectly neutral. These aren't quite forward controls. I mean, they're forward-ish, but they're not like the Indian Scout. They're a little bit more narrow than that. I would say it's pretty neutral, but I think it's because I got the floorboards. So these are kind of, you know, my legs aren't quite at a 90, but, you know, I got a little bit of play there. I also love, I know a lot of people, this is a love or hate thing, but I love how the dash is on the gas tank. It just gets out of the way and you're not seeing anything there. And if you need to look down and see your speed, it's right there. It's not a big deal, right? I really like the minimalist front end. My last cruiser was a BMW R18, and that bike was just as heavy as this, but it didn't feel as heavy. It also didn't feel as cumbersome as this because the weight of the bike is so low on the R18. You really don't feel it, and I think it's slightly longer. I could be wrong, but I think it's a longer wheelbase, and also the weight of the engine is just lower into the frame, so the center of gravity feels a little bit more planted on the R18. I gotta say, these Reinhardt True Duals are just an amazing match for this bike. Let's talk about these Harley grips. I thought I was going to rip these off and change them out for Vans right away, but you know, they're the rubber and chrome grips from Harley. I think Harley still makes them, and yeah, they just feel so good. I like the diameter of the Harley grips. My other two bikes are metric, so the handlebars are thinner and the grips are thinner. And from going from this to riding those other bikes, I really feel like, you know, I really miss having the thicker grips jumping from bike to bike. Another cool thing on this bike is that it has cruise control. And I did not think an 04 would have cruise control or have fuel injection, and this bike has both. So pretty cool. And it's a really good cruise control. You just turn it on here, you get a red light, then you set it and everything with your right hand. But you know, it's kind of quirky because you got to sort of like move your hand off the throttle to make it happen. But I prefer all the cruise controls to be on the left side, but I know Harley has that left-right thing going on, especially with these turn signals. I think that's the hardest thing for me to get used to, especially when I'm turning a corner and having to hold the throttle. Trying to find that turn signal is just, you know, obviously if you only ride Harleys, you're used to it, but jumping back and forth between other bikes, it's a noticeable thing. So when I bought the bike, obviously it's a 20-year-old bike, so I did the 3-hole oil change and all that stuff. And also I had to address the front brake caliper because the lever was going almost completely to the grip. And after I took off the caliper, cleaned it up, and did the whole thing to that, the brakes are just hard as a rock. They work so good. And I have to admit, this front brake just got a lot of stopping power on it. I'm really impressed with it. And you do have dual rotors on the front, so that's a plus, especially bringing this, you know, I guess with the added accessories, almost 800-pound motorcycle down to a stop. So really important on big old heavy cruisers to have an amazing front brake. Well, just to have amazing brakes in general. All right, another thing I didn't mention is the previous owner on this bike changed out all the lines to stainless steel lines. I jumped on another Road King at a dealership with just the regular rubber lines, and I gotta admit, you really feel a difference with the steel braided lines. Compared to any other standard bike, it is not a nimble machine, but for a big old heavy cruiser, I would have thought it would be a little harder to turn and sort of get the weight around. All right, what else? Let's go back to ergonomics for a bit. This Mustang touring seat is almost perfect. I'm 6'1", and I feel like the sitting position is almost perfect. Why is it almost perfect? Because the way that the seat sits, it sort of goes down a little bit and has a scoop, and it's got a nice kind of mini backrest on it. Although that's really comfortable, what ends up happening is over a long ride, yeah, you end up sinking in that seat a little more, and then you feel like you're having to lean forward to compensate slightly. I mean, it's a long, low cruiser, you know, not much suspension travel in the back, so you already got that going for it. You know, obviously this wasn't my bike, so it could have been perfect for the previous owner. If I were going to keep this bike, I would probably just get a seat with a little bit more of a level profile. Since I'm taller, I also like to sit over the bike a little bit more to have a little more control. But man, if you like kicking back and just enjoying the ride, these long bars with this seat, it's pretty nice. So another thing to talk about on this bike is the lighting you get stock from the factory. I mean, you get, you know, a really nice front headlight. The front headlight is awesome in the dark. I'm not sure if I got any footage of that, but I'll post some videos if I do have some footage of it. But the stock headlight is just amazing in the dark. The high and low beam is really good. But then you add these fog lights on there, and it just gives you an incredible presence on the road, but also a really wide and lit field of view. I mean, you can really see the critters coming in at night. And these are not LEDs, these are all halogen, I believe. Really good halogen. And you know what's funny is everybody is putting these crazy LED lights on their cars and bikes right now, and I don't know if it's just cheap Amazon China stuff or whatever, but some of the LEDs and stuff really hurt your eyes when you're looking, you know, straight ahead and you got oncoming traffic. It really just hurts your eyes. And to me, you know, that's sort of distracting and almost blinding to a driver. For some reason, halogen bulbs are just easier on the eyes, just a little bit easier on your retinas, you know. Also, I gotta add, once you put these wide bars on this bike, man, the field of view is just incredible. You know, the mirrors are out there a little further, and so you're seeing a lot of what's behind you. Yeah, these mirrors just do an amazing job with this bar setup. Now, I'm not normally a Harley rider. I have owned, this is my second Harley, but I wouldn't consider myself to be a die-hard Harley rider. But I love what Harley does, especially with these older bikes. So this is a SNS 510 cam kit in here. The cam chain tensioners were replaced when that went in. Also, it has a Dyno Jet 5 with a tune on it. So this is not your stock Road King. So I looked up the charts on this, and it seems like it's pushing about mid 80s in torque and horsepower. So in horsepower, probably low 80s, and then torque about mid 80s. Now, those dyno charts are to the wheel, so you're getting a way more true representation of what your bike is actually going to do, because there's the power reading from the crank and then from the wheel. So a lot of bikes that you see from the manufacturers that say, you know, 100 foot-pounds of torque or something like that, it's a huge difference between the power at the crank and power at the wheel. I'm a pretty conservative rider, so, you know, even though this bike has more power than anybody would ever need, and it's definitely more power than I would ever need, but compared to my R18, it feels about the same. I'm not sure what the stock dyno chart is for the R18 at the wheel. So, you know, maybe if you guys know, you can leave a comment below. All right, coming to a stop is predictable and easy. Now here's where that weight comes in. When you're leaning the bike over, you definitely feel it. And if this bike were to go past the tipping point, there is no saving it. you just let it go and pick it up. I do have to say, the throttle response on this is so linear and predictable that you can do these slow speed turns and maneuvers all day long. But I gotta say, man, the soundtrack on this bike, cruising around with these Reinhardt pipes and these 510 cams, man, this is just an incredible sound. Well, so let's compare this to maybe a newer Harley. So, you know, the kind of the standard right now is the 114, I would say. And I've ridden a 114 Heritage, and it's a very different feeling than the twin cam engines. A lot of people say that the twin cams are the last of the traditional Harley. I don't know how much of that is true, but I know when I hear and sit and ride on a twin cam, or even an Evolution, it's just an experience. My last Harley before this was a Harley Roadster 1200. That had a set of Vance and Hines on it. The engine sound, the feeling you get when you're riding, all that is just amazing. It feels so good. And I think that's the number one thing. When I bought this bike, I wasn't concerned about speed. I wasn't concerned about power numbers. I was concerned about sound and feel. And this is exactly what I got. I got nothing less than what I paid for. Another topic we should talk about here, is it a smart move to buy such an old motorcycle? I mean, an old Harley nonetheless. It is a 2004, again, a 2004 Road King Classic. And, you know, even though people say it's in mint condition, every time I go buy something, someone says it's in mint condition, or, you know, everything up to date. Every time I go, it's always not the case. It's never maintained to the standard that I would maintain my own bike. I like to be by the book, because when I sell the bike to the next owner, I don't want to pass on a problem. Now, when I bought this bike, there weren't any problems per se, but there are some problems inherent with the twin cam engines that if you're not careful, you could really get burned on. And the first thing is the cam chain tensioners. So those go bad in the twin cams. Everybody just replaces those pretty much right off the bat. You know, if you have a low mileage bike, like 5,000 miles or something, probably you don't need to worry about it right away, but I would just get it done as soon as possible. The second thing is the shift shaft seal. So that's where the shift shaft goes into the body, and all that's holding your transmission in is a little rubber seal and a washer with no real torque on it and all that. So most older Harleys will weep a little bit of transmission fluid if it hasn't been changed out, but a lot of people say that even after they change out all that stuff, they still get some fluid leaks. And this bike, you know, it has a little bit of that, but nothing major. It's nothing that you would really need to be concerned of until maybe you had to change the drive belt or something to go in there. Now, this bike has never left even a drop of oil on the floor. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have some seepage and leakage. And honestly, for a 20-year-old motorcycle, I was not expecting it to be perfect. I was definitely expecting to have to do a few things to the bike and all that mess. If you're not a Harley rider, another thing you got to be cognizant of is that you have 3 holes for the oil. You have your engine oil, your primary, and your transmission oil. So those are 3 different oils. However, interestingly enough, Harley Davidson says that you can actually use the same oil in all 3 holes. And for this year, it was 20 W50. And what's funny is when I went to the Harley dealership, they've changed the weight, but I was like, no, I'm not putting that in my bike. I'm going to do what the old spec was, because I didn't want to change the weight of the oil. But long story short, I did the AMSOIL, engine oil, AMSOIL transmission fluid, and Bel-Ray primary fluid. So It's all buttoned up, ready to go. And man, let me tell you, after that oil change, it ran so much better. Now, I'm getting to my destination, so I want to wrap it up a little bit here. I want to talk really quick about highway performance. Because when I bought this bike, man, I had a trek. I bought it, I was about 100 or so-ish miles away. I bought it from a guy who lived out in the country, and pretty much I had to off-road this bike to get it out of his house and driveway, and then proceed to take it on, you know, 100 or so miles on back roads and highway, so kind of half and half. So, and then I've ridden it on the highway many times, so I would say the highway performance on this is spectacular. It's a heavy bike, you got to kind of plan it out, and it's not the most agile thing in the world, so you really just got to be careful there, but it definitely has more than enough power for the highway, and it will cruise with the best of them. Speaking of that, these gears are very tall, and they have a lot of play in them. So this is a 5-speed transmission. You can really kind of milk all those gears, and you don't have to really shift a whole bunch. You know, unlike, you know, some Japanese bikes, you're shifting a lot. It's a more fine-tuned, but these have really wide ranges. And did some reading, and I figured out these SNS cams, you know, kind of like you to get into the meat of the power there, to kind of get things moving versus delivering everything down low. A lot of people that have these cams say it's just a really balanced choice for this bike. So yeah, highway, no problem. So what are my final thoughts on this bike? Yes, amazing buy. You can really get these for a good deal. I paid $6 grand for this bike, which I thought was a really good deal. I see Road King Classics in the white color listed all the time for like 8 or 9. You know, but realistically, a really good price to pay for this, like an absolute steal, would be about $5,000, and then kind of, you know, average or low average would be, you know, $6 grand. Now, this bike was dealer maintained most of its life, so that was kind of a good motivator for me. And also, when you're tearing into the engine, installing cams and stuff, it's nice to know that Harley was the one doing it. Doesn't really matter to me, but I've had bad luck with dealership mechanics in the past. But let me talk about the suspension real quick. I think the suspension on this bike is really good. It is not riding on a cloud, but is very comfortable. You really do feel the road and everything that's going on with the road. It is definitely a comfortable suspension. However, you are going to feel it. Also, what I've noticed with these tires, the tires that are on here are older and they need to be replaced, so that's just fine. However, I noticed that they track a lot, so they track any kind of imperfection in the road. One good thing about that is you are getting kind of an accurate reading of what is going on with the road, so you're not sort of just running over things randomly. However, you know, if you're not used to that, it does kind of track tar snakes and stuff like that, but you get used to it after a while. And yeah, it's not that crazy, not that big of a deal. I would love to keep this bike. When I first bought it, my initial impression was I'm going to keep this bike for forever. I'm going to do all the maintenance on it and everything like that. However, I own quite a few bikes that I love already, and although this is an amazing bike, it's an amazing only bike for anybody. But for me, I have 2 other bikes that I love. I have my Z900 RS and my Yamaha Tenere, and you know, I just really like riding those more. And the other thing is that my daughter is starting to get into riding and dirt bike riding and stuff like that, so that's another kind of expense that you gotta, you know, buy some small bikes and stuff and some gear. And so I figured it'd be a good time to kind of let kind of my third bike go and put that money, you know, towards my daughter and get her first dirt bike. And she has no idea that I'm getting it for her. So hopefully we'll get that reaction on film and see what she thinks about her first motorcycle. So that's going to be cool. But yeah, wonderful bike. I recommend it. Just don't buy a 20-year-old bike and think that there's not going to be something you're going to have to do. But yes, the Harley Road King, one of the best experiences, I think one of the best experiences I've had on a Harley has been this bike. It is just You know, it is the older Harley to get, in my opinion. Now, this is the 88 cubic inch. You can get, I think, the 90 something, so take your pick. Whatever you get a great deal on, but honestly, 88 is perfect for me, especially with the upgraded cams. Man, it's just a blast to ride. 2004 Road King, 2 thumbs up from me. What an incredible bike. All right, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. It's Bert's bike, and I'll catch you on the next one. Man, I'm gonna miss this bike. Literally perfect.